Welcome to the Naked Podcaster. Get ready to hear stories of someone brave enough to bear it all. Let's get naked.
Hello, welcome to the Naked Podcaster. Today I have with me Ann Charles. Ann, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Your website is anncharles.com. Everything, of course, will be in the show notes. Tell me all about your website, and holy cow, please tell me about your awards.
Well, my website is always a work in progress, and it's actually 5 years old now, so I'm thinking I have to update it again soon, which really makes me cringe and wince. If anyone's ever done that, it's such a major overhaul.
I'm doing it right now. I hate it.
See, you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's just, the cost is crazy. And then one thing after another of you have to dig and find all this stuff. And I always think, couldn't you hire somebody to do this for me so I don't have to do all this of my own work, right? So very lazy that way. But anyway, so the website, it has my books. We do have, well, I say we, because it's like me, myself, and I. You know, you always, as a writer, you think of yourself as multiple people, right? Yeah. The marketer and me, we have this website, and we have a blog, and we have lots of fun stuff in the blog. We have interviews like this. We have links to, I've been doing some Facebook Live videos where we do like a book every talk, and I drink while I do it. So tequila is my drink of choice. And sometimes my husband makes my drinks really strong. And sometimes he makes them a little strong. It's kind of like a game here. So sometimes I'm pretty tipsy by halfway through, and other times I make it through sober as can be. So we have fun with that, though. But we've been doing that since the virus, we went into lockdown. I thought it was a really good way to interact with readers because we're all stuck inside. So I started doing it with book 1, and I think we're on book 10 of the Deadwood series now. So, and I have about, I think 28, this new one coming out will be my 29th book. So we have some time we can go through each one. So that's the links to that are on my website. We have quizzes we're doing for each book. So if you've read them, you can go take the quiz, and they're kind of tough but fun. And then we also have puzzles that building with different, because I have illustrations in every book. My brother is an artist illustrator, and he does the cover art for my books as well as the illustrations. So I'm able to take those fun illustrations and make them into puzzles and all kinds of stuff. So we have all kinds of stuff on my website to do. And of course, all the books are listed in the book order as well, and links to my Instagram page, so you can see what I'm doing over there if you're on Instagram, and all that good stuff. It's all mixed in there. So anncharles.com.
It's a lot of information. And when we started, before I even thought about it, I'm like, every single person I have on my podcast that has a book, I get the book and I read it. You have 28, and I'm like,
I know.
Well, there's 5 series. Is that correct? They're broken down into 5 series. So tell me about all.
Currently, there are 5 different.
Okay, what are the series about?
Okay, so the main one that I started with is the Deadwood Mystery Series. And it's a mixture of mystery with paranormal, a lot of humor. All my books have humor. That's kind of one of my, main things. And romance, always a little bit of romance, some spicier, some not, just because I started off way back when trying to write romances, and I love romances, but I just really suck at emitting a lot of emotion for long, big long scenes. So I kind of moved to killing people instead of, full on romance. So the murder, and then it became killing monsters, which was even more fun. So, that's blended into most of my series. So that's the Deadwood Mystery Series, and that's the one that's won multiple awards and hit the USA Today bestseller list. I also have the Jackrabbit Junction Mystery Series, which is it's mystery with adventure, I think Treasure Island kind of a thing, mixed with body humor, plenty of spicy romance, some, it's just a big overall mix, bunch of dirty old guys that are trying to pick up women, at an RV park in the first one. So, I mean, they're lovable, but they are there for a purpose. You know, they're trying to find wives. So they're testing out the women. So that's part of it. But the heroine is there with her grandfather, and he's one of them. So that's kind of the setup for that. And then I have the Dig Site Mystery Series, which is my foray into Indiana Jones. You know, I loved that whole show, the movies, and all about Indiana Jones. And I wanted to be an archaeologist for a brief time until I saw how much writing is involved with archaeology. So ironically, I've become a writer instead that writes about archaeology.
Mention that.
I know, not thinking that through. But so that's a mix of, it's got archaeology, but it's mystery, it's adventure, there's romance, there's scary stuff. It's dips into paranormal as well. And that takes place down in Mexico, Maya dig sites. So that's that whole set. And all three of those, and the next one I'm going to mention, are all in the same world. They cross over. So characters will go between the different series on all those. And the same with the fourth one that I'm writing with my husband, Sam Lucky, and that is the Deadwood Undertaker series. That's my Deadwood Mystery Series, the prequel. What happened in the 1870s version of Deadwood before we got to what we're dealing with now in modern day. So that's a whole, it's paranormal, Western, comedy, adventure. So all that kind of stuff set back in the Old West, which is really fun. It's fun to write with my husband and have this whole project we do together. And then I have the AC Silly Circus series, and those are novellas, and it's the freaks of the freak show world and the freaks of the shapeshifter world at a circus that travels, and mystery tied in. So paranormal romance is main theme with some mystery. And I got into that because a good friend of mine had a Kindle world and she wanted me to write in it. And so I had to pick something that was shapeshifter that fit in her world to write in that Kindle world. And then, of course, Kindle world's shut down, so we got the rights back. So I wrote the second one. So now I have this crazy AC Silly Circus series that, you know, still is out there, and I will eventually write a third novella and keep the circus train going, but it's a little bit lower on my to-do list at this time. So that's the 5 currently running. So we'll see. And it's hard to keep up with 5. There's a 6 I'd like to add, but I just struggle to keep up with 5. So
I have questions about that. But first, you said that the 29th book is coming out. Where does that one fall?
It's the Deadwood Mystery Series number 11. So it's the newest Deadwood Mystery Series, the big one. And it's 135K, so it's a big full-length novel. And that one comes out, the ebook comes out May 29th. Print, we're waiting to see because of Amazon and all the funky stuff with printing and the backlogs. So, but ebook's out May 29th.
Of 2020. That is so this is my biggest question, because I'm not an author in anything fantasy. I think it's really funny that you were like, I was trying to write these long romance scenes, but I like killing people better.
Yeah.
So my question is, how do you actually physically keep track of everything with fantasy to make sure the story's tying in? Do you always have the storyline in the end already chosen, or does it develop as you write? And how in the world do you keep track of it just for one series?
Well, when I write a story, I plot it ahead of time. And it's a real loose plot because I usually go off my plot plan pretty early on by the first turning point. Excuse me. So I do have an end in mind for each book as I go. And I have ideas on how I'm tying it all together. You know, the big weaving, the rug I'm weaving. But I kind of let my brain just go once I get in there, and it comes up with some really great stuff. Not even with alcohol, imagine that. So I just let it roll and see what comes up and go forth. Now, as for keeping track of it all, early on, I had a wonderful person come up to me at a book signing, and she said, I've read your first 2 Deadwood mystery series, and I love them. And I think maybe the 3rd was out. And she said, do you know that you changed, I think she said, you changed eye color on one of the characters partway through? And I said, oh, you keep track of that kind of stuff? And she was like, yeah, it's just the way my brain works. You know, that's how and so I said, you're like what I've been waiting for. You're hired, if you will. And I said, would you like to be whatever you want to call it, where you keep track of my story worlds and help me keep track of all the details and the threads and keep them in a worksheet, because I need help. It's going to get really crazy. Yeah. And she said, yes, I'd like to do that. That'd be fun. And so since then, she's built a business out of it. And it's called World Keeper. Diane Garland's her name. And she is my world keeper. And she has a big OneNote file for each series that has everything in it. It's crazy what's in it. And we have a running joke of, kind of, you didn't expect me to pull that thread back, did you? And it's not in the notes, or it is in the notes because she did expect it. So she's a huge help. And that I couldn't, without help like that, or at least me keeping track, I'd be in big trouble, because it's one thing when you have 3 books, but when you have 10 plus and readers binge on your books, they notice a change because they're reading one a day or one every other day or however. So they will see the smallest screw up a lot of times. So it's really important to be on top of the details and make sure everything is, you don't change a vehicle, you don't change hair color, you don't change a storyline you had before. It has to be smooth for them so they can really enjoy the show, if you will.
I asked someone else this once who had fewer books, and she said she has everything on an Excel spreadsheet, and she has to. So same thing. And that's why if she had to keep track of the details on an Excel spreadsheet, your just volume is so much bigger. So that makes sense. What a great job that she created for herself.
I know, it's really what she's needed by many. I mean, she's got clients I know that do Westerns, have series in Westerns, mysteries, all kinds of stuff. And it's so important to have the details exactly the same as you go through a series.
Yep. Yeah, because you're right. People do binge, or they're waiting for the next book, or they're more, you're split between 28 books and 5 series. So, but if I'm reading one series, even if I'm waiting for the next book, I would remember.
Right.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. I love the tequila thing that you're doing with your husband. I've got to look that up and watch some of that. Have you thought about doing a podcast for it?
Long ago, I was with a friend of mine. We did this thing called First Turning Point. It was a website for new authors where, the first turning point in your career was the idea. And we had all kinds of guest articles, and we would do podcasts every week. And my partner did the main. I was always on there with her, usually as the guest, or the one that sat next to Johnny Carson's chair, or whoever's chair nowadays that is. You could tell my age there. So I did a lot of podcasts in the past, but it really was never, I'm not that great at being as organized as what you have to be to run, a regular show. This whole Facebook Live thing I started this year was new. I'd done a few things here and there for like a minute or two, but first of all, it takes a lot of cojones to step up and do this, regularly. And so you're amazing, because the naked podcaster, oh my gosh, I feel naked as it is when I'm just on screen talking and everything, but here you are doing a show, which is awesome. So I haven't really gotten into the podcast idea because it's just not what I'm strong at, and as I've learned over time with marketing, find your strengths, work to them. Everything else you push through and you learn how to do it, but work to your strengths the most, I guess.
Actually, I'm so glad I asked that question, because it doesn't matter your answer, but I love your answer. And I think people really need to understand that we can't be everything to everyone, and that's totally fine. So working to your strengths that's so important. I applaud that. I want to go back in time now. So let's start sharing your story. You said the 70s. We talked before we started recording. I was like, I was born in 1970. No wonder we're a hot mess, So tell me, jump in wherever you would like.
Okay, so 71, to give away my age. So right there with you. Yeah. And when we talked about this, when I think back to the 70s, it was really, in spite of everything, it was a really happy time. But if you really look at history, it wasn't. But I made a real happy time of it somehow. And so I love 70s music and all that good stuff because it takes back to the childhood. But, you know, ironically with even that is, so my parents, they got divorced when I was 3 to 3.5. And I'm the 4th child from their marriage. So I was, you know, my siblings were all there. And it was not a clean and simple divorce by any means. It was very messy. It was a battle for kids type messy. And I love them both. I understand now that I'm adult what was going on. But at the time as a child, it was pretty messed up. And I lost my hair. From the stress of it as a 3-year-old, I was feeling all that. And it was a major, if you ask each of my siblings, of course, it was a major time in our life that really hit us hard. It was the first struggle in our lives, you know, in our childhood lives. So while I was so young and I don't have the memories of my siblings of what was going on the surface, I have all that stress that I dealt with. And what comes with that, going back and forth between parents for everything. And I like to think, you know, and my siblings and I have talked with spouses around and stuff. And my brother's ex-wife, she was going in through college for psychology. And she was like, you really need to talk to somebody about this. All of you guys, you really should see someone, seek some counseling. And I said, are you kidding? This is where my humor comes from. Because, you know, born in the 70s when time was crazy. And then having parents that went through a major divorce and the stress, I think I learned how to take problems and horrible things and turn them into something funny so that I could get through it. So I really think, and you see that with a lot of comedians, they have some troubled lives, but they learned how to overcome it using humor. So I really feel that a big part of the humor throughout my series, that was the birth of it, was that divorce. So while, you know, my parents off and on has, you know, we're sorry we put you through this, I like to say, no. This was a wonderful thing that happened because it made me who I am on the page. And it brought out this sense of humor that I might never have had if it wasn't for that. The ability to look at the horrible stuff with the virus that's going on and still find humor in it and laugh at things that you know, when overall it's a very scary, horrible world right now,
right.
But still finding that humor and making jokes and making people smile and laugh, which I love to do. I like to take people that are really struggling and make them smile and give them a chuckle and take them out of that pain for a little bit if I can.
As we're recording this, it's, you know, like May, and we're in the middle of the coronavirus of 2020, which is
right.
Unprecedented. My husband a couple days ago said, send me that meme you had about the coronavirus. I think I said to him like 30. I'm like, just go to my Instagram feed, dude, because this is hysterical. And it's not, but
I know.
I love what you're saying. I mean, the situation isn't, but it is about how we see it. And humor was one of your tools.
Right. And there's been some wonderful humor that's come out of this whole horrible mess. And it's not that we're laughing at people that have sick or people that have lost one or so those. No. It's just finding a way to deal with this tragedy. And we all deal with it differently, but many of us turn to humor to make it through. And I think it's a necessary tool.
I agree wholeheartedly. I understand how you went through that struggle when you were younger, and I'm sure that continued as you grew up, because if it was a nasty divorce and kids are back and forth and split, that's always difficult. At what point, I love that you said that stress, like losing your hair at 3 years old, I can't even imagine. I mean, I think of my kids and like, holy cow. So you took that, you found humor in it, and that was part of your coping. And then when did you and how did you translate that into writing? Was it much later?
Yes, it was. I didn't, I never intended to be an author. I had lots of career plans growing up. And as I mentioned, Indiana Jones was on that list. In ninth grade, we had an art project where we were supposed to write or draw what we saw ourselves as doing in the future. It was our career art, And I have a great friend, and she drew herself as a social worker carrying a briefcase. And I can remember her picture clearly. And she is a social worker. And so she really knew what she wanted to do. I was so messed up on trying to figure out what the heck I wanted to do that the coolest job to me sounded like a camel jockey. So I have me on a camel in my art picture that I still have in the attic. So that was my first career thought, was I'll jockey camels. Unfortunately, these days, that's all robotic now, so you don't even get to sit on the camel and race. So that career would have not worked out for me, it turns out, at all.
Where did that come from?
I don't know. All I can think is I was reading a lot of Harlequin novels by that point, the little white ones, and my stepmom got them in the mail, and I would go up where she kept them all. I would go sneak them. I don't know if I was supposed to be reading that yet or not, but I would sneak them. She knows that now and laughs, of course. And she came in when I was 3.5, so she's been with me for my stepmom for a long time. But she gets a good chuckle out of that. But I think I was reading about all these desert sheiks and this romantic idea, of them. And so camel jockey just seemed like such a romantic career. I don't know where that comes from.
You need to frame that.
So, and then I went to being a lawyer, paralegal. I know, right? That's the funniest. The picture just cracks me up. I think, what was I thinking? My art teacher must have thought,
Yeah,
so,
interesting kid. Interesting kid.
Yeah. So it moved from there, and then I was going to college for majoring in Spanish, and thinking I was going to be a translator or something in Mexico. So it just kept changing until I finally tried writing a book, a romance in my 20s, and I sucked at it, but I sent it in to Harlequin and they turned it down very nicely. And then it just kept going from there.
So you loved it. You found passion in writing, but
right.
not writing about passion. So.
Right. Exactly.
That's awesome. I mean, I think all of us who like to write or are authors have this secret desire to write this off the charts Harlequin. Like just blow the doors off, because I know that's one of my secret fantasies.
Oh, yes. Still, even though I know I don't do well with those long love scenes, I still think, I wonder if I could write a really, really good romance that would just wow people. And then I don't, because the humor just, might mess it all up.
What job did you end up doing prior to actually getting published? And then I want to jump into you getting published, because it's a really interesting story.
So I was a technical writer. I was going to school for Spanish. I went to 4 different colleges. I did the 10-year college plan.
Yeah.
And the last one, I couldn't get Spanish for a night classes or for the degree I wanted, because I had to go in the day and I needed to work. So I had to switch majors at that point, and I went to English because the running joke is, and it's the truth, that every college I went to made me take English 101 again, because no college thought the previous English was good enough. So by this, I had 4 English 101s under my belt, and I was kind of like, okay, you need to write, apparently, because they're really working on your English skills here. So I ended up getting a degree in English with creative writing as a minor. And then I went to this place where I had a friend who I'd worked with before, and they were hiring a receptionist at this software company up in Seattle. And I went for the receptionist job, and she said, you're getting an English degree. And I said, yeah, I have about 2 more quarters. And she said, well, we need a tech writer. How would you like to be a tech writer? And I said, what's a tech writer do? That's how out of it I was. I mean, it wasn't even on my radar. And she explained, and I said, well, that sounds like what I've been doing in college, all these English classes. And so they hired me as an intern, and then ended up hiring me once I finished full on. And I spent, I think it was 14 years being a technical writer.
Wow.
So it was, the thing technical writing did was really increased my I mean, it really helped my writing skills. Even though it's technical writing, I really got the whole, all the language just really, and how to say it concisely and how to improve all the time. So it was a big bonus, and it was a great job that I just stumbled into in life. And I tend to do that. I tend to stumble into things and go, oh, okay, hey, we'll do this. So technical writer for banking software. Now I used to joke because they'd always say, nobody reads the technical docs or the user guides. And I said, well, I'm thinking about putting a sex scene in one of the pages and see if we get any tellers. It was bank software. Get any tellers that call in about the sex scene I put in there. Or maybe I'll put a murder scene. And my boss, she was funny. She'd go, I swear to God, you better not. So she would read everything I did. I mean, we made sure, but it was a good job for a long time. As I built the whole time behind the scenes, I was building this writing career and writing fiction. So it paved the way for that.
Let's discuss, at some point you got married, you mentioned a husband. Let's talk about how your family fell into that. Because I know in working and having a job and making the transition that you did, that's a consideration. So fill us in on that. That's your romance story. There you go.
Well, there were two. Yeah. So I married right when I was 19 the first time and moved to California, Southern Cal. He was in the Marine Corps. So we spent 7 years almost married before he was out, and we'd moved to Arizona, and it just kind of fell apart after everything. And so we split. But we'd actually moved up to Seattle before we split. That was part of the reason. But anyway, we ended up splitting up there. And that's where I met my current husband. And I don't like to say current because that makes it sound like there's another one coming. And there's not. I met my husband. And I had no kids from the first marriage, which was a wonderful thing. So we met at work. We worked in the same place. And that was before technical writing, when I was still being a secretary at different jobs. So we started working together, and my marriage was falling apart. So we would become good friends. And so anyway, it really was a wonderful little romance, but I won't go into depth on that. But anyway, in the end, we ended up married, and then we waited a few years and had kids. And he was working at he's been a cartographer, making maps and software tech, software everything up in Seattle. Worked at Microsoft, all over, in those kind of jobs. So, but it was that downtime. What was it, 2008? I think, when the big recession hit last time. Yeah. And his job, he got laid off, but I didn't. As a tech writer, I was still running. So we had two really little kids, and I was really getting going into writing again. I'd been doing stuff, but it was like, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to work full time. And we have two babies. So he really stepped up, and he was staying at home, and I would go to work. I'd come home. I would hang out with the kids and family till about 8 or 9 when they all went to bed, because they were all wiped out. And then I would stay up till about 2 in the morning every morning, writing and working and building my websites and building everything. And then I would get up again about 7, drag my butt into work, do my day job, come home and do it again. And by Thursday night, I was wiped. We always joke about, it's Thursday night, your mom's going to bed at 8 tonight, because it wore me out. But so that was kind of the setup as I was building this career. It wasn't, I'm going to be an author and here I am. It was 10 to 15 years behind the scenes of building to get to publishing, and then, really getting the awards and going up the chain.
I want to make a distinction here, because I'm an author, because I do all kinds of things, and I added a book to what I did. You're a writer because it's your career. Okay. And I think I love that distinction, because I struggled with that for a while. Well, I'm just an author of this one, but I'm not a writer. I'm not doing it as a profession. It's not my job. It's just something that I added to it. And you're a writer, but you had to start off. I just love the progression of how you built into that. And like, for all the mamas out there, we all understand working the full-time job, trying to be focused on the kids, trying to do the side hustle, which it is in the beginning, to build it up, to create. And you really did. I'm going to stay an author, but you became a writer in this process. And that's what an accomplishment. I love that. I'm so proud of you.
Oh, thank you. It's a lot of lack of sleep, not blood, sweat, and tears, lack of sleep, sweat, and tears as we build. And the worries of, am I a crappy mom? I always still have that, because I do still spend a lot of time at the computer writing. And luckily I'm home with them. And even more now that since they're doing school at home, I feel like we're like this now, which my kids may not love because they might have liked their teachers better, right? Because they're nicer. But I did go through lots and lots of doubts, especially the early game of side hustling. I had to go to conferences. I had to be traveling more. I had to do more talks to really build. And that took time away from my family. And I was already a full-time job and writing. And then here I am gone for stints of time with little kids. And it was not easy. And I don't want to go back to that again. I always talk about, I don't travel much now, very little. And my family goes with me now. But once the kids are old enough and they're like, go, get out of here, then we plan on really ramping that up again. And I don't think, so I didn't cover, there was a point in time when I had to quit the day job to choose writing because writing was getting, do you want me to go into that?
Yeah, let's segue into that. Because you talked about 2008, but I think this is closer to 2013, right?
Right. I think it was 2014 was the year I quit, or 2013, and then I moved. Well, it was sometime in there. My memory's starting to fade. But I had to make that call of quitting that secure technical writing job. My husband we had younger kids still, so he was still at home, and he's like, I'll go get a job, we'll do this. But we were talking about moving to Arizona. He, by this point, was doing so much of the behind the scenes work with my books and the traveling that we could do. He was there so that the kids and, we could all go together. So we had really become a team by this point. And it was no longer, it is Ann Charles at the front, and Ann Charles doing the talking. But there's, just like they always say, the same in reverse. There's a female behind every male that's successful. It's the same. There's a male behind females that are successful many, many times. And in my case, it's the same. He's right there. So we had to go from that extra income to relying solely on writing. And that was terrifying. Yeah. We knew one of us could go get a job if needed, but we were going to try this thing. And so we had to really prepare ourselves. Health insurance. I mean, it came down to health insurance. Cobra is so expensive. And we tried that for a bit, and then we had to go off, and I know a lot of people don't like the Affordable Care Act, but it saved our bacon because finally we could get crappy health insurance, but it was something for us. So, and it was affordable finally. Instead of paying $2,000 a month for a health insurance plan, we could pay a few hundred, which was huge. So all that came together at the right time. And I was able to walk away from the day job. But there is a point, and a lot of people don't realize this until you make the switch, that you go from, oh, writing is my dream job. This will be so fun. It's going to be wonderful. All I'll do is write stories all day, to, oh, crap, I have to write book after book after book. And it becomes a slog of just like a day job. I can't write a book and then take a year off. I have to write a book, get it going to publishing, and start the next book. And it's a constant, I think of it as mountain climbing. You start at the bottom, you got to climb to that midpoint, which is the peak. The downtime, it's fun to go to the end, but then you hit the bottom and you're looking up at another huge mountain going, here we go again. So that was a big change, and it was really scary in many, many ways, and a little depressing when you think, I got to keep doing this now for 20 more years plus. But I do love it. So highs and lows that come with that.
I think it's super important. Well, yes, I know a lot of people that start businesses and then they realize what it takes to run the business. And the running the business is so awful for them that they don't want to do it on their own anymore. I mean, it's that same sort of thing. Like, yeah, sure, it sounds like this super lovely fantasy, but the reality is not the super sexy fantasy.
Oh no, bookkeeping is utter hell. It's like the worst.
Right. Right. Well, there's so many moving parts behind the scenes that nobody thinks about. It's not you sitting there, writing fantasies all day and skipping in rainbows. Right. It's not like that at all. And yeah, when you're a writer and it's your career, that's why I said I'm going to stay an author, but I'm really proud that you're a writer, because there's no way I want to tackle that. Yeah, it's huge. And you've maintained loving it. So let's talk about how you've maintained, because that's a lot of stress for a lot of different reasons.
Right. Well, part of it is those 5 different series I write, they keep it fresh. So normally I finish a book in a series and then I jump to the next series or, and I keep switching playgrounds, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And I go over here and play for a while. And it keeps that love fresher in my mind because, oh, I'm back over here now. I'm hanging out with these guys and I love these guys. They're so funny. Okay, so the Deadwood series, I have great time. It's Violet Parker. We're only ever in her head and it's first person. So I see this and I did that. Well, when I go to my Jackrabbit series, it's third person and I get to hop between the sisters. There's 3 sisters, the Morgan sisters. I get to hop between their heads and go on each of their plots and how they, so it's a real big change. And I need that a lot of times to keep it fresh for me. Otherwise, I'd love to write Deadwoods all the time. They're the big sellers, but I fear that I would start hating it after a while and it would become a boring thing. And then once you feel bored as the author or the writer, then it comes on the page and it's very clear. And so I can't do that. It's, every new book I fear is my worst. It's going to be the worst ever. They're going to hate it. Finally, I'm falling. It's going to go down. It's always a worry. But at the same time, then you just keep pushing forward and go, no, that's just the demons. They're back. They're always there. Some people think they can get rid of the demons. I don't know what they're doing, but my demons are always there and they always will be. They're part of what I think is the process for me. So yeah, that's how I keep it fresh that way for me.
That's amazing. And then so did you or your husband ever end up having to go back to work or did you just start working? I know it was a hard process, but you were able to do it.
I was way back in the early days when I started, I co-owned the publishing company that we published my first few books under. And I did that with my agent at the time. And so when we moved to Arizona and we were changing everything, I quit the publishing business because I couldn't keep working with other authors and doing all that was needed to make them success and do my own and keep me going. So I had to choose and I chose, writing over being a publisher. So we also quit that. I stopped that at the same time. So it was a real big shift all over. And no, we have managed, there's years that are not as good. And then there's years that are booming years. It's the nature of the beast. So we have managed to still work at this job, this business together and maintain that. Now he did jump in and started writing with me on the Undertaker series. And it's because it was a really exciting idea, but I knew I'd never have time because to write a Western and that history, you can't screw that up. You can't fudge history. You have to research. You have to get it right. Mostly, you can make up stuff and add, but you can't screw up stuff. People will, that turns readers off. So he is an awesome researcher. He always was. And that's always, one of his strengths. And he's loved the Old West. So it was kind of a natural of, we'll do this together. And we'll try this together. And then instead of, always should one of us get a job, it's no, we now have this even more going on. So we've just pulled all that together and managed to keep going through the highs and lows. And there used to be the gold rush days, which I was in, which were wonderful in the early, 2011, 2012, 2013. But it did dry up and it's been a whole different game. So, and on that note, I'm just going to add that I often have new writers say, how do I do it? How can I do it to get to, where you're at? And I say, I would love to help you, but I don't think I can because what I used is no more. Free on Kindle in the early days was a boom. Now it's just everything's free. So you have to use different tools. And I have to change every year my marketing tools to make it work still, constantly changing and evolving with digital and everything else.
Yeah, it's big. And I know for somebody who likes to read voraciously, I am so excited that Kindle is free. But I get it. Like, it's not good for the author. That's not a good thing for us. And I also believe that there's this, for people who haven't written a book that want to, there's this idea that you're going to become J.K. Rowling's, right?
Yes.
Yes. Little 50 Shades of Grey. It's just going to explode like that. And there are so many books and so few ever make it anywhere near that. And like your royalties are, I think my royalties are $2.10 on an actual physical copy of a book. So when I learned that, I was like, oh, cool. I mean, I'm glad it's $2, but you kind of think maybe that's a lot of copies, So
Right.
it is a lot of work to keep it up.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, if you had an agent and you co-owned the publishing company, that means you weren't self-publishing in the beginning.
I was small press because we put it under my umbrella. So yeah, when I started, it was listed small press. And then by 2015, I was then indie. So it wasn't officially self-published, but it was me doing it under the umbrella. So, and a lot of us were doing that back then because you wanted that umbrella to hide the fact that you were self-publishing, because that still it still had a stigma attached to it. Nowadays, it's not near what it was, but.
Although still, if you get picked up by a publishing house, especially the top ones, that's a huge boon. It's the only way you can make New York Times bestsellers, or, I self-publish, and I would do it that way probably again, but there is still a differentiation. And I don't like how the publishing houses structure, but they do it that way because you have a benefit of being with the publishing company. So,
right.
You start to get how it all works. So that was a great hybrid of having your own publishing company or co-company.
Right.
Did you have to get the rights back to your books? How hard was that process to break away?
I must have known from the beginning that I was probably going to leave, because I had my IP attorney write up the contract for me with the publishing house I co-owned, and I had him make my books so that at any point I could walk and I would get the rights back when I said I wanted them. No questions asked. And my partner signed off on that. She understood. So from the beginning, I covered my butt and made sure that I had that ability to just walk away. And that's what I did. I gave her, this is the notice. At this point, we're switching over. We had a date we set on, and then, she kept all the other stuff and kept running with it. I don't even pay attention. And then I took my stuff and went elsewhere, and just started doing my own thing. So if you're going to ever play that game, put the money into getting a contract written up by a lawyer and play it safe, because there are nightmare stories of people losing rights. And so you do not want to mess around with that at all.
Yeah. And that's why I asked, because for people who don't know, that can be so that was super smart. Explain to me the category of indie.
The category of indie, what do you mean?
Well, when you're an indie writer, what does that mean as far as the differences in the publishing world?
Okay, so I write it. I pay professional editor, so I don't chintz on editing, but I write it, we format it, we market it, we sell it. Behind the scenes, I am the publisher when I listed in Amazon and Nook and all those. Royalties come to me. The only middleman is the distributors in this case. There is no publisher in between me and the distributor. So I work directly with distributors when it comes to print, when it comes to some of the audiobooks I have done. There is the Deadwood series I have on audio. I have them all on audio, but the Deadwood series I have through a couple of middlemen. And I went that route to experiment. And so then I get paid royalties through the middlemen who then distribute it. So the big difference, with being indie is you run your world. And as much as there's times when I think, boy, I sure wish I had someone helping to push this or market this or do this. I also have done this long enough and know that I am enough of a control freak that I think I would seriously have problems with an editor coming in and saying, no, we're going to do it this way, or no, we want you to make this a love triangle. No, we want you to do this because it sells better. I can see that we would just do that right out of the gate now. So I'm probably not the best to work with unless I go into it knowing that I'm going to just hand it all over and not care. Then I could probably handle it. But the biggest difference it is the distribution. I mean, and the marketing. So you can get it out there. Yeah, I have print books out there, but I have to market. Can I get them into airports? Not easily, but some indies do. I mean, it depends on how hard you push and what you want to do and where you want to go. I work with a distributor in Western South Dakota, well, South Dakota, the state they cover, and they actually work directly with me as a publisher and distribute for me. So my print books are spread out over there. So you can make that happen. You just have to, it's a business. You have to work it all and be savvy about that.
I think marketing, regardless, even with the publishing house, they want you to have a certain number of following. So you're still doing a lot of that marketing, and you still need to find super fans. I love what you did for your people in South Dakota.
Right. Deadwood Fan Party.
Yes. So tell us about this. This is great because you started building a fan base. You're a writer. This is your job. I want to talk about your awards in just a minute because that's so amazing. But also, you go to Deadwood, South Dakota, and you have this fan party. This is so fun. So tell us about that and your super fans.
Right. Oh, yes. They're awesome. I just, the readers are so awesome. None of this would have happened without these awesome readers that do so much to help me. So I started going to Deadwood. I spent part of my time growing up in Deadwood. My mom still lives right in that area, Deadwood and Lead, the town next to it. So I went there all through my life, summers, and spent holidays there. But then I got the book, I started this whole Nearly Departed in Deadwood and wrote that and went there to do a couple book signings with the first two were out. And I think that was the first, 2013 was the year we started, or maybe it was 2012. And there was just a small group of people that had read the book and loved it. And there are vendors throughout Deadwood that were selling the print book in their stores because it's Deadwood, so it's tourism based. And a group of about 20 to 25 came from different places, Nebraska and whatnot, in the area mostly. And we all hung out and we had a little party the last night that, with the book signings and stuff at just the loft in one of the historic buildings. And I think we had a cheese tray and some drinks. And we did we toured a haunted brothel and the haunted hotel together. So it was a lot of fun. And they're like, we got to do this again. So we started doing it yearly, and it just kept growing from that original 20 to, I have to find a new venue. Now I got to find a bigger venue. Last year we had about 120 that came in, and they come from Canada coming down. We have people from Texas, from all over North Carolina. They're so wonderful. They come all the way in, and we all spend the weekend, and there's book signings, and I try to add more and more every year, events and things that go on. But the cool thing is, so when I wrote Nearly Departed and all the books since, in Deadwood, South Dakota is a real place. Very historic. Wild Bill Hickok, Calamity Jane, all those big names, they were part of Deadwood's history. I made sure that I kept, even though modern day, the buildings that are public buildings, like the library, the police station, everything is set where everything currently is. I added a few buildings where I needed to, but you can go around Deadwood, and if you know the series, you can see where she works, where the building is, Calamity Jane Realty. You can go to the police station. You can see the stuff up in Lead, the sister city, and go to their opera house where one of the books takes place. And you can do a tour of it, and they'll take you down in the basement where Anne Charles has this happen. So the locals have really gotten involved and made it even more fun it's like, Harry Potter land or whatever, Harry Potter world, only smaller, not. But you can come have fun in Deadwood, and there's a lot of stuff to do anyway, and it's the beautiful Black Hills, so a lot of hiking and biking and natural stuff. But then you can also take the books and see where everybody lives and where things happen and picture it. So that brings a lot of people too, which is really fun. And unfortunately, this year we had to postpone the fan party itself to 2021 because of the virus and the stipulations. But we're still going. I'm still going to see my mom. So we're still going to do book signings just outside with masks on. We're going to do the haunted house investigation with the Black Hills Paranormal guys. They're awesome. And we're just going to be less people and wearing masks. So we're still going to have the party, but it'll probably be about half the people that normally, just because people have to play it safe, which is, I totally understand. So yeah, it's the Deadwood Fan Party every year, and it keeps getting crazier and more stuff.
But I love it, how it went from a book signing to this whole other thing, which is incredible.
Yeah, it's great. We have so much fun together, just going and, having meal. Just we'll do different dinners out where everybody can come, and and they've become really good friends. The people that keep coming, they've built their friendships, of course. So that's always really fun too for them to meet up again.
And super fans are so important because they're the people that like your stuff, but are also willing to post about it on their own social media, which is how in any situation, I mean, about anything, but authors know this really well. It's not just about your own list. It's about who you're connected with and if they will do
Right.
some of that work for you too. And just
Right.
promote it because they love it genuinely. So
Right.
yeah, they're really, really, really important. Holy cow. So if someone, I'm on your site and I want to start, and 28 is a little daunting, would
Yes.
you start with the Deadwood series?
It depends what you like. If you
Yeah.
like paranormal, then I do recommend you start with Deadwood. There is a series timeline with all my books because they
Oh,
cross over.
yes. Oh my
So
gosh.
I have a series timeline. If you really want to read, for those of us who like to read in very, order, time-wise, there is that. But if you want to, and that mixes the series together. But I really, if you like paranormal, then I say you should probably start with the Deadwood series. It'll give you a good taste of it. If you don't so much love the paranormal and you want to go easy on that, then you should start over in Jackrabbit Junction. And that's Southeast Arizona. And it's kind of Treasure Island, but crazy. It's not, G-rated by any means. There's swearing, there's, some spice and romance and all that good stuff mixed in. But it has the three old vets trying to pick up women. And that's kind of the start of it with Claire, the granddaughter, and she's the heroine of the series. And she's not a kid. I mean, she's 35 or 33. So she's there trying to keep her grandfather from getting hooked up with someone that's going to take all his money, right? So anyway, it's up to you if you're more into that, or if you like archaeology, then by all means go down to the Dig Site series and start there. But usually most people probably come in on the Deadwood series.
Yeah.
Or the Jackrabbit series, but mainly the Deadwood series. And they start at Deadwood #1, and then you just go through. But knowing that you want to start Jackrabbit Junction soon because the characters start crossing over.
Yeah.
And Violet, who's the heroine of the Deadwood series, her brother is the star of the Dig Site series. So again, figuring out where you want to come in depends on your personality.
On your website, is there a way to get the series in a list from 1 to 28 and how they interact?
Yeah, there's a list of all books, but it's on Facebook. I have a list,
Okay.
and I need to add that to the timeline of all that. That's something we've done more in the last year, where we've talked about where everything falls, and here's the timeline coming in. After I've written all these books, but I tend to forget that I've written all these books and don't think about starting new. If you were coming in new, where would you even begin?
Right.
So I do need to add a list in the time stuff, but and I might have that. I could add it to a blog post too, but it's on my Facebook right now.
Okay. Okay.
But I can. That's a good. I need a note to myself to put that up on my website for people.
Well, it would be fun because they overlap so much that if you get in and you get hooked, you'd want to go in order. I want to end and wrap up by talking about the awards that you have won, and because you're indie publishing, how that came to be. Because I feel like, and maybe it's my opinion or I'm a little off, but I feel like it's more difficult to win awards and get that recognition.
Yeah, it really is. Of course, New York Times is not going to happen because many of you know New York Times is print book going out to bookstores pre-orders. It's based on pre-orders of books at bookstores. And so since I'm not, it's really hard for that to happen. You have to really be way up there in the indie world. But USA Today is achievable with enough growth because that's based on actual orders that come in the first week of your book coming out. So that one is more definitely easier to hit, or a book that goes big, viral, and sells all of a sudden a bunch, then you hit the list. So yeah, I started with Daphne du Maurier for Nearly Departed, and that is a mystery romance award that was throughout the US. I believe everybody could enter. And I did win that one, which was a total shock. I didn't think that Nearly Departed was going to win any awards when I finished it. It was fun. We had a good time in it, but it's not going to win against all these other hardcore mystery things, because this is light. It's it's not light mystery, but it's humor filled. So I was nominated, and I actually went to Florida, took money that was, I'd been left by my grandfather long ago. And I took that money in because we had little kids. I mean, that's a $2,000 trip from Seattle. So I took that money that I'd been saving for, I think I was going to give it to my kids someday. And being the wonderful mom that I am, I said, screw it. I'm going to go to Florida on it. And I'm going to see if I win anything. So I went with a friend. My husband stayed home with the kids, and I won. I won the division, and I won the overall. And I can't tell you how shocked I was. So that when I went up there, I had no speech because they said, my friend kept saying, write a speech, write a speech. I'm like, I'm not going to win. I'm not going to waste my time on a speech. Well, then I stood at the podium with no speech, and I forgot to thank my agent at the time. I forgot so many people. So I was blown away. But so that was a wonderful night, and that was right before I published it. It was still, I believe, sitting at a publisher who ended up rejecting it. Marketing rejected it, saying they didn't think I'd have enough. I mean, editors loved it and pushed it, but the marketing team rejected that book. So that didn't happen. But then in the meantime, I had submitted it already for the RWA Big Golden Heart, which is unpublished romance. And I won the Golden Heart, which I didn't expect that either, because it's not romancy enough, I felt. Well, my friend, one of my author friends went, and I gave her a little speech this time, just in case. And the moment when they announced that, and she called me, and my name was up, and the other friend was up giving the speech. She's like, you won. And I will never forget, I was in my kids' room with a basket of laundry, folding underwear. And I was like, I just won the Golden Heart, and I'm freaking folding underwear right now. Oh my God, this is so wrong. So it was an amazing double win. And it really gave that book a boost coming out of the gate. With all the awards, we did press releases, and it started off with a bang, and I had the second book out right away, so they could just go boom, boom. And again, Amazon was, it was all newer. There wasn't the competition. There were maybe 400,000 other books, if that, maybe 3. So I could hit high much easier. And that's kind of how it all began. And then the 4th book in the series is the one that got the USA Today bestseller, hit the list on that. So 4 books in, it went big. And that's and then I've won Suspense Magazine Awards, which have been wonderful, best of for them, multiple. I think I got a hat trick on that, so I've gotten 3. And that's people nominating and others voting. So it's just been wonderful. I've been so fortunate to have all these awards come my way, and be able to tack them onto the book to make it look even better, So yeah, that's the awards.
And thank you so much. Your journey is really unusual. And like I said, I'm so proud of you for making this a career. I know how difficult that it is. And I love your story. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for having me on here. This has been fun.